There is nothing worse than being trapped in a stagnant reality where nothing you do matters. But Jax is close. The Amazing Digital Circus is the only time I've ever seen a hopeful hell, and also the only time I've cared for a bully. But with the not so recent release of the trailer for this last act, plus my hyperfixation moving to Jax for definitely no reason, he has become the only thing I think about, as Gooseworks is a liar, and this trailer is definitely baiting us, just like every other one in the past. But even though I'm able to see past this lie, I still can't see the truth, because there's endless possibilities with this show, and as for everything I get right, I always get 2 things wrong. But for the first time ever, I'm actually saying this, Jax is in a black and white situation, one in which he's forced to make an active decision to get better, or he's gonna go mad. And we've already seen the first entertainer reach that fate, which led to his death, and now it's Jax's turn. I just don't know which one he's gonna pick, presuming the fact that he doesn't try running away again, as that would lead him absolutely nowhere except closer to himself, which is only going to cause more harm and probably lead to abstraction. Now, I could start this by repeating everything I've already said about Jax, and I will, but it shouldn't take that long as, despite what the masses say, he's a pretty simple guy. And that's no insult, but I think it should be, as Jax has dealt with being stuck here, the worst, having his problem be everyone else's, pushing them all away as he is scared he will lose someone again. And this itself is a rough situation, but it's only made worse with his lack of ability to deny the denial he lives in. As everyone here might be cartoon characters, but no one is a joke to them, except Jax. And you could make the argument that this is acceptance, and you would be correct, only for the fact that this whole facade is merely a mask used to hide any human emotions he might show. Jax loves to seem in control. He wants to seem like he's the most confident, the most funny, when the reality is that he is neither, making everything worse for everyone around him, while also trapping himself further in his denial. It's why people love to defend his character, but get pissed when another one makes a small mistake.
Not anymore.
Jax is vulnerable, but his fear of vulnerability comes from just how much he shows it, making obvious lies to push people away, bullying Gangle because she's the agreeable one. This is him pushing his vulnerability onto other people, all in an attempt to keep that mask going, despite it breaking more than Gangle's.
Are we the broken ones?
He's a character that you can feel bad for, but can't deny the lengths of his actions. And that's why Pomni's line in the last episode caught me and so many other people off guard.
We've all done bad things.
Now, I have my thoughts on this line, and while this one's particularly bad, the whole scene itself represents a move that, while kinda sudden, is also necessary for the survival of the cast. As yeah, Jax has done really bad stuff. A lot. And this phrasing was definitely a bit awkward in its messaging. Realistically, no one has actually done anything comparable to Jax. But while Jax has done the worst out of anyone here, we do need to forgive him, not only to survive, but also change. As it is possible, and more important, necessary. You know, I never thought I'd be saying this, but Jax is in a position of change or death. And despite the misleading nature of this trailer, I unfortunately still have hope for him. As even though abstraction is an issue, even that would be better than whatever the fuck people are talking about with him becoming the villain. As he might be a bully, but with everything the show has done with him so far, him becoming a villain does not sit right with me. As well, maybe his ending won't be a happy one. I don't think it will be a malicious one, because despite his acts to not care, it's very obvious that he still does, as apparently nothing matters to him, which kinda means everything does, as that inverse is practically the same thing in this scenario, especially when he's mourning over his friends' deaths, despite telling Pomni he would forget about her in a heartbeat, which was a lie, but we've seen this facade play out and break in real time, because this bunny really needs to let go of his denial and actually face himself, as not facing yourself in a world as stagnant as this is what causes people to abstract in the first place. So this mask may have worked before, but it can't now since things are different. We've seen Pomni break the monotonous loop of the circus, and everyone's been moving to find meaning in each other. Except for Jax. being full of surprises, but really the most predictable thing he could do here is not change. But this has got to stop, as this situation is new, and for the first time ever, they need to adapt to something that isn't the circus. As if he doesn't, then really the only other escape is abstraction. Which would be a poetic ending, as despite what we're first shown, abstraction's not the final act of denial. It's the final act of acceptance, being one of the more surprising reveals, as instead of a violent break in a person's mental health, it's shown to be an experience of acceptance, to become part of the digital world and its nothingness, to take everything that can matter and leave it in a void of shapes and colours, drifting past everything that you once called a problem. And that is honestly a perfect reason as to why Jax would be the most vulnerable to this, as it's not running away until you can't take it anymore, it's embracing it. Embracing everything and making everything nothing. It's the one time Jax has been in a sense of peace, but that makes it so much scarier as for when you go too far and make it irreversible, as this human urge to escape, which has been their goal forever, makes abstraction a dangerously peaceful thought, as it's irreversible and basically suicide. So with Kain being gone, who was kinda the main source of Jax's distraction, he has nothing left but himself. He can't go along bullying everyone, as there's nothing to bully them about. All his stimulation has been ripped away, and he's left to bear the horrors of himself, who he is without his mask. With this lack of meaning catching up to him, his abstraction is not off the table, probably being the center of it if it wasn't for the cast being so unnecessarily nice to him. Which I will admit is definitely helping, it's just a matter of when he's going to accept this. Again, I don't think Jax has ever fully had malicious intentions with what he was doing, as a lot of this bullying was to help him cope, but it still confuses me when he says stuff like,
She likes when I'm mean to her though.
honestly, this might be genuine from him, but it could also be him trying to justify what he's been doing. It's most likely the latter, but it can be hard to tell, especially as this seems like the first time he's actually acting true to himself. But his whole idea of these characters being tropes would justify this thinking, as in his mind, Gangle is the sad one. So it fits perfectly with that mindset, especially when he's trying his best not to view these guys as human, which is kind of worrying when you see how he treats the NPCs.
Violence.
So, while definitely not justified, it's at least somewhat understandable what he's saying here, which is what makes his realization in episode 8 so interesting to me.
This is real.
So this line is basically the whole reason I'm making this video, as it shows the change in mindset that Jax really needed at this point. His whole facade has always been slightly inconsistent on how aware he is that it was an issue. At some points it seems like he knows it's stupid, but just does it anyway. Yet he seems genuinely shocked here at someone changing. I'm sure King Acting Sane was not on Jax's bingo card, as this was so shocking to him that he started to break his trope as well, making what seemed like another panic attack into something much more important than other people are making it out to be, as it's now showing the break in his mindset that would allow him to actually start improving. He's no longer acting like these people are stereotypical cartoon characters, he's realizing the reality of their humanity, and in return just how much damage he has been putting onto them. It's a very subtle but an incredibly meaningful change, as you can't fix a problem you don't know exists. So having this realization is what he needs to improve, as no matter what else he did, if he didn't want to change, he never would have. So it's very interesting to actually see this shift, and also how it's going to change how he treats these people. As while it's never been good, he's never outcasted unless it's by himself, following his crash out in episode 6 with resentment in episode 7, only really emphasizing how much he actually cares for Pomni. So, facing the fact that they are real, when already mixed with the obvious amount of care he shows, is the perfect recipe for improvement, which is crazy to say about Jax, as improvement would not only mean breaking your mindset, but also your actions that you've been trying to justify this whole time. We know his acknowledgement that this is real means he needs to confront himself on what he's done, which will be harder for Jax than just pretending none of it mattered in the first place. His sarcasm has always been a use for distance and control, but everything's collapsing on itself now, and they need to be close. There's no one person with power. Kain is no longer here to keep everything stable, all they have now is themselves. And that is everything Jax has been avoiding this entire time. He wants to hide, but that persona was built around the circus. It was all built for these NPCs, these adventures, the stimulation from these events. So this change to needing to be accountable for your actions, while definitely sudden to him, is the only real way to push him forward. Which is kinda good, as there seems to be a heavy focus on Jax in this finale, just basing that off the trailer. So the way this conflict may play out is probably not going to be smooth, if one at all. As we know, Michael's best performance is yet to come, and specific clips of Jax seeming angry and or upset are scattered around with the rest of what's going on. And this is the main point towards Jax becoming a villain, potentially being the best at altering their reality, but also the thought of Jax's line stating that they have nothing left, which means everything will need to be built by them. And technically speaking, they all have equal power here, although it's definitely possible that Jax will be the strongest in terms of ability. That might play out a bit. I don't think it will be the main ending though, because as dark as the trailer might make it seem, we don't actually know how much of this is gonna be the finale, assuming Gooseworks is doing her usual bait and switch. As while any surface level view would point to Jax being the villain, looking at everything we've been shown, the resentment, the obvious care, I mean even just the messaging behind the show, Jax's ending is probably gonna be the same as the show's. Melancholic. I don't think it will be evil, and I don't think it will be all bad, but probably not all good either, as my opinion still stands that they aren't leaving. And while there definitely are more options now, through all these possibilities, I don't think an escape is one of them. And leading back to the show's themes, they need to find meaning in each other. Jax's nightmare has come to life, but even if he does break, I don't think it will come from malice, more so his need to confront himself and everything he's done. Because in a world where nothing matters, admitting that people do will be the hardest thing for Jax. But if we're looking to find meaning in a stagnant reality, then it's either accepting this or accepting nothing. So Jax is going to need to choose between the cast or abstraction, as there's no longer anything to distract him from reality. Really, I think this ending is going to be the breaking point for everyone, and exactly how they overcome this. We're going to see a lot of backstories, a lot more trauma, but if accepting reality is the only way to gain a sense of peace, then I am all for that ending. I don't really know what's going to happen with the mystery of this place. The show's always been about the characters, so it's like, whether an answer is actually given is kind of up in the air. I'm a bit like, okay, I don't really have a leading theory, but I do think that whatever the answer is only going to lead them further to their breaking point. I'm scared, you're scared, we are all scared for this ending, but Jax's ability to change has been shining through, even if everything else is going to be very, very depressing. I hope you've enjoyed me talking about Jax. Again, but don't worry, there's always more to talk about with this guy.